For centuries, Christian communities weren't just living in the Ottoman Empire, they were a vital part of it. Before the 20th century, Christians made up an estimated 20% of the population in what is now Turkey. Communities of Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians thrived as artisans, merchants, and farmers. They had their own churches, schools, and cultural centers, but they were never equals. As second-class citizens, known as dhimmi, they faced special taxes and legal restrictions that meant their lives and property were never truly safe. By the early 1900s, the once mighty Ottoman Empire was crumbling, known as the sick man of Europe after losing most of its territory. This decline created immense pressure at home. In the halls of power, a radical new idea took hold, an aggressive Turkish nationalism that saw the empire's Christian minorities not as subjects, but as a threat. The dream was no longer a multi-ethnic empire, but a new, purified Turkish state. As tensions grew, Christians became the scapegoats for the empire's decay. In 1908, a political group known as the Young Turks seized power, promising reform and equality for all. But those promises quickly soured. Their real goal was Turkification, to create a purely Turkish nation. The empire's Christian populations were a direct obstacle to that vision. Leaders within the Young Turk movement began to paint Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians as foreign elements, spies for enemies like Russia, and a danger to the state. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 gave them the perfect cover. With the world distracted by the trenches in Europe, the Ottoman government, allied with Germany, could finally move against its own people without anyone noticing. A secret special organization was formed, filled with violent criminals released from prison to carry out the government's dirtiest work. The stage was set for a crime so horrific, it would later need a new word to describe it. The genocide began in earnest on April 24, 1915. On that day, on the direct orders of the Young Turk leadership, authorities in the capital city of Constantinople rounded up hundreds of Armenian intellectuals, poets, clergy, and community leaders. They were deported and, almost all of them, murdered. It was a decapitation strike, meant to leave the Armenian people leaderless, disorganized, and helpless. From there, a systematic campaign of extermination rolled out. Provincial governors received chilling telegrams. One message from a key architect of the genocide asked an official, "Are the Armenians, who are being dispatched from there, being liquidated?" Answer explicitly. The intent couldn't be clearer. This was not about resettlement. This was annihilation. Across the empire, the orders were carried out with brutal efficiency. First, Armenian men of fighting age were disarmed and executed. Then, soldiers would descend on the villages, round up the remaining men, and kill them. The women, children, and elderly were told they were being relocated for their own safety. Forced from their homes with only what they could carry, they were herded into enormous convoys. This was the start of the death marches. Tens of thousands were driven on foot for hundreds of miles toward the barren Syrian desert. These weren't journeys, they were processions of calculated cruelty. Guards deliberately deprived them of food and water, turning the scorching sun into a weapon. Anyone who collapsed was shot or simply left to die. The routes were chosen specifically to pass through rugged, desolate terrain to maximize suffering. Along the way, government-sanctioned killer squads and local bandits repeatedly attacked the convoys, murdering the marchers and kidnapping women and children. Rape was used as a systematic weapon. Thousands of women and children were forcibly converted to Islam and absorbed into Muslim households, their identities erased forever. For those who survived the march, the destination was often a series of concentration camps in the Syrian desert, like Deir ez-Zor. But these weren't refugee camps. They were open-air killing fields where the last survivors were left to starve or die from disease under the relentless sun. By 1918, historians estimate that between 600,000 and 1.2 million Armenians had been murdered. An ancient people who had lived in the region for 3 millennia were all but erased from their homeland. But the horror didn't stop with the Armenians. The Young Turks project was broader, to eliminate Christianity from Anatolia entirely. The Assyrian people suffered a parallel genocide, which they call Seyfo, or the Year of the Sword. They, too, were subjected to massacres and death marches, and entire villages were wiped from the map. An estimated 250,000 to 500,000 Assyrians were killed. The Ottoman Greeks, especially those on the Black Sea coast, faced a similar fate. Seen as collaborators with Greece, they were targeted with massacres, forced labor in deadly battalions, and brutal deportations. The Greco-Turkish War after WW was used as an excuse for a final, violent cleansing of the land's Greek inhabitants. By 1922, hundreds of thousands of Greeks had been killed, and over 1 million more were expelled. All told, between 1915 and 1923, the Ottoman and emerging Turkish governments murdered well over 1 million Christians, with some estimates putting the total death toll of Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians combined much higher. Millions more were displaced. It was a coordinated, state-sponsored campaign of extermination, fueled by religious hatred and radical nationalism. The Christian population of the region plummeted from around 20% to less than 2% in just a few decades. After the Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War I, a few of the genocide's masterminds were put on trial and sentenced to death, but they had already fled. Justice was never truly served. The rise of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and the modern Republic of Turkey ushered in a new era, defined by an aggressive and unwavering denial of the genocide. For over a century, the Turkish government has fought to dispute the historical facts, claiming the deaths were just the unfortunate result of wartime chaos, not a deliberate plan. In Turkey, speaking about the genocide can lead to prosecution under laws forbidding insulting Turkishness. Yet, the evidence is overwhelming. Eyewitness accounts from foreign diplomats, missionaries, and survivors, plus official records from the perpetrators themselves, all document the slaughter. The crime was so profound that it inspired a Polish Jewish lawyer, Rafał Lemkin, who was haunted by the fate of the Armenians, and later lost his own family in the Holocaust, to coin a new word to describe it: genocide. Today, more than 30 countries and a consensus of historians officially recognize the events of 1915 as genocide. Every year on April 24th, Armenians around the world commemorate the day the arrests began, a solemn remembrance for the souls who were lost. The story of the Christian genocides in the Ottoman Empire is more than just a dark chapter in a history book. It's a chilling reminder of how nationalism, when twisted by hate, can lead to unimaginable horror. It's a testament to the resilience of the survivors who scattered across the globe carrying the memory of a lost world. And it's a powerful lesson in why we have to fight for historical truth. Remembering this genocide isn't about vengeance. It's about justice for the millions of victims who were marched into the desert to die, their voices silenced and their stories buried in the sand. It's our job to unearth those stories, to speak their names, and to make sure that a crime of this magnitude is never again met with silence. To forget genocide is to kill its victims a second time. We must not forget. Thank you for watching. If you believe these forgotten histories need to be told, please subscribe for more content that brings the past to light.